So today we're actually going to talk about a very controversial topic, the use of glyphosate as a herbicide and pesticide to actually use throughout the world. And there's very many concerns now about the safety of this product continually used and for exposure to people and other species to the products that have been treated that way.
Welcome back to our Naturally Healthy Pets channel. Today we have a really wonderful guest with us, Dr. Jean Dodds. So I'm going to read her bio very quickly, but this is just a small snapshot of all of the wonderful accomplishments in her lifetime. So Jean Dodds became a veterinarian in 1964 after graduating from the Ontario Veterinary College and has spent more than 5 decades as a clinical research veterinarian. From 1965 to 1986, she was a member of many national and international committees on hematology, animal models of human disease, veterinary medicine, and laboratory animal science. She was a grantee of the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute and has over 150 research publications. She also founded HemoPet in 1986, the first nonprofit national animal blood bank. Your pets are her passion. Jean Dodds' mission is to build a better future for you and your pets and to restore and maintain the highest level of health. So without further ado, we have a celebrity in the building. Thank you so much, Dr. Dodds, for joining us.
You're welcome. It always makes me feel strange after so many years that I can still keep doing what I'm doing, which I love to do. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So what is glyphosate? Glyphosate is a herbicide, meaning something that kills herbs. It's used primarily to control weeds and grasses. It's an active ingredient in the popular weed killer called Roundup and other similar products. There are many new products that contain the same chemical that have been renamed because of the controversy surrounding the original name Roundup. Although the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and other international health authorities regard glyphosate weed killers as safe when used as directed, oh my God, the government is not helping us here or elsewhere. The International Agency on the Research for Cancer has listed it as a possible carcinogen, a cancer-causing agent. It's a non-selective herbicide. That means it's not selective for the types of plants that it kills. It can kill all plants it comes into contact with. Glyphosate works not by poisoning a plant, by preventing it from making certain proteins that are required for the plant to grow. In other words, it stops plant growth. It's also a crop desiccant. In other words, it dries out a crop. So if it's applied to a crop just before it's harvested, it kills the leaves. So the crop dries out more quickly and evenly. This makes harvesting the crop more efficient, particularly for grain crops like wheat, barley, or oats. However, the main difference between the two applications of this product is their concentration. And the concentration can range from 0.25% to as high as 41%. Generally, the concentrations of glyphosate used on crops are lower. This is the structure of glyphosate, and you can see the chemical drawing on the top portion of this slide, and the lower portion shows the structural diagram looking like a period of jacks that are joined together. Now, this is an interesting slide, which I realize you can't read very well, but I wanted you to look at the use of glyphosate in the United States. And the highest use are the dark brown colors, the next highest being the sort of sandy gold colors. And you can see a significant amount in California, some in the Northwest, mostly around the middle of the country, saturated with glyphosates, including Texas, and of course on the East Coast, where many of us, of course, are living. And you can see that the use by year since 1992 to 2018, when the latest yearly data have been accumulated, shows the increasing use of this product. It's going exponentially upwards. Now, how does it work? It's a systemic herbicide. It's absorbed by the plant rather than just sticking to it like some older potential toxic agents like we use DDT sprays. So the plant actually absorbs this chemical. Absorption occurs mainly through the plant leaves rather than the roots of the plant. Thus, it's more effective in killing leafy weeds like crabgrass or dandelion. After that, though, it moves systemically through the whole plant and blocks the synthesis of the proteins that the plant needs to survive and grow. When sprayed on individual weeds, its effects remain relatively localized. But when used as a crop desiccant to dry out the crop, it can be scattered within the soil where it can remain from up to 6 months, although bacteria in the soil do quickly break it down. Now, it also breaks down quickly in food crops with a half-life of only 8 or 9 days. And that's the concentration of glyphosate that's reduced 50% during that 8 or 9 day period. The mechanical drying of grain crops speeds up the process, however, reducing the glyphosate to just very trace levels. So when used for crop applications, glyphosate is unlikely to get in the groundwater because it binds tightly to the soil. These are all good things. Now here's a picture of glyphosate with a plant. It's applied in contact with the crop and the weeds. It affects crop health. It persists in the environment. Glyphosate residues and metabolites, as AMPA is called, one of the major metabolites, is uptaken by the crop. It interacts with nutrient availability by chelating, binding micronutrients, and competes with the absorption of phosphates. So what products contain glyphosate? It's used worldwide. It's sold in liquid, in concentrate, and solid forms. And the active ingredient in many weed killers sold in hardware and garden stores, including certain brands. And these are just the actual names of the brands. Roundup Weed and Grass Killer, Roundup Quick Pro Herbicide, Reagan and Massey Grass and Weed Killer, RM43, Total Vegetation Control, FarmWorks Grass and Weed Killer, Ranger Pro Herbicide, Ortho Ground Clear Vegetation Killer, Cleanup Weed and Grass Killer. Those are just some of the commercial brands. Glyphosate is also used for industrial farming, or the way it's used can vary from one country to the next. Some countries limit the concentration to 1% or less, but others use concentrations as high as 11%. It's a huge range. Potential and ongoing risks. Due to widespread use, glyphosate is continuously being studied for possible long-term effects in humans, animals, and of course on the environment. The Environmental Protection Agency has conducted extensive investigations since it was introduced in 1974. After reviewing the available data, the agency determined the following, and please read these with a grain of salt. When following the product label, it does not pose any risk to adults. Oh my goodness. No reason that children are more sensitive to the chemical than adults, or that it poses any specific risk to them, even if they're exposed during a pregnancy or after the pregnancy. No risk to children who eat foods with glyphosate residues or play in residential environments where glyphosate has been used. No indication that glyphosate disrupts the endocrine hormonal system and causes problems like abnormal periods in females, obviously, or infertility. No indication that glyphosate disrupts the neurological nervous system and causes conditions like Parkinson's disease. And finally, they said it's not likely to cause cancer in humans. Wow. How other organizations that support the EPA support this non-concern for glyphosate: the European Chemicals Agency, the Canadian Pest Management Regulatory Agency, the European Food Safety Authority, the Joint Food and Agriculture Organization of the World Health Organization, and the German Federal Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. However, controversy persists. In contrast to that, the Interagency on the Research for Cancer says it is, quote, probably carcinogenic to humans. They gave it the second highest classification rating from that agency of Group 2A, avoiding the Group 1 classification of known carcinogens. And there's a website to read about this listed here. Gosh, what about horses? They're also of concern. Glyphosate-resistant plants for horses are ryegrass and Johnson grass, and many horses eat both rye and Johnson grass. So we have to worry then again about glyphosate resistance in the plants that horses eat. Now, the international agency evidence is largely based on studies from mice, which showed that high consumption of glyphosate was linked to certain types of cancer. They did not see the same in rats, only in mice, but exposure through the skin was seen to be less likely, as only 1 to 3% of it is absorbed through the skin. So this product is not absorbed to any extent through the skin. They also cited a possible link in humans where long-term, high-level exposure may increase the risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a blood cancer. But it said that the evidence was, quotes, limited, whatever that means. Opponents of the classification argue the evidence is weak, citing studies in which glyphosate does not accumulate in the body and dissipates to 1% or less after 7 days. Gosh. In 2019, amid this controversy, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services said, quotes, there is a potential cancer risk associated with the use of glyphosate. You can see how confusing this is to the public and to even those of us that are trying medically to keep animals and humans, of course, safe. What about safety issues for food? Being widely used, trace amounts may be detected in fresh fruits, in cereals, in vegetables, and other food products. According to the EPA, however, these residues pose no known risk. Now, you see it says no known risk. That doesn't mean there's no risk. It means we haven't found it yet, or at least they haven't found it yet. As long as foods and food products combine with these limits, they're safe for consumption. The acceptable daily intake is the amount taken in by mouth within a 24-hour period. Currently, the acceptable daily intake for glyphosate is 0.5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight per day. That's milligrams per kilograms per day. That's 0.5 milligrams. However, this is what glyphosate damage can look like on plants. You see how the change in color and these leaves are shriveling up. Now, what about food safety and legality issues? The European Food Safety Authority studies have reported no observable negative effects at 100 milligrams per kilogram per day. Now, remember, we just told you that 0.5 milligrams per kilogram per day was safe. Glyphosate herbicides are legal in the USA and most other countries. But some countries have banned this product completely, or they've set out specific restrictions. France, the Netherlands, and Belgium have banned glyphosate for household use. In 2021, sale and use of glyphosate herbicides was banned in Vietnam. Germany announced in 2019 that it would be prohibited for sale by the end of 2023. So that should have happened now. Even so, Monsanto, the manufacturer of Roundup, currently faces billions of dollars in class action lawsuits. Some have been or are being settled out of court. The state of California was a major litigant, along with several cities and counties that have banned or restricted its use. This includes Los Angeles County, where it banned it on county property, citing concerns about public safety and cancer. What about animal use and safety? Chemical herbicides like glyphosate are endocrine disruptors of the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis. And we all know that we have far too much hormonal disruption, and particularly thyroid and related diseases today, than we've ever had in the last 15 or 20 years. Gene expression and metabolomic data derived from the offspring of healthy pregnant rats fed glyphosate showed similar alterations of endocrine function in the offspring of naturally hypothyroid rats. In other words, a strain of rats that were produced that are naturally hypothyroid. Collectively, publications emphasize potentially serious adverse effects of exposure to glyphosate on adults, as well as on the fetuses of newborns of humans, domestic livestock, companion animal species, and wildlife. In 2014, glyphosate residues in the lungs, liver, kidney, brain, gut wall, and heart were found in malformed, euthanized, one-day-old Danish piglets, 38 of them. All the organs and tissues had glyphosate in different concentrations, the high-end concentration being in the lungs and the heart. The lowest concentration was in muscles. The detection of these malformed piglets could be the cause of their congenital anomalies. And the conclusion is that further studies are urgently needed to prove or exclude the role of glyphosate in malformations in piglets and other animals. This was 2014. Gosh, what has happened since then? 10 years further on. Glyphosate in vertebrates is genotoxic and teratogenic. It poisons genes and it causes change in the genome, so you have teratogens, just different tissues form. Cytotoxic to human placenta, embryonic kidney and liver cell lines at very low sub-agricultural dilutions. Adverse effects occur on the male reproductive system of ducks and rabbits and in the liver of rats. Use of such herbicides modifies the environment, which stresses living organisms, can disrupt freshwater microbial communities directly or indirectly, reducing biodiversity of aquatic species. Differences between the sensitivities of microorganisms occur. Enteric microbiota protect the GI tract against colonization by pathogens. So domestic animal GI tract microbiota consists of a balanced composition of facultative and obligatory anaerobic bacteria. However, these profiles vary considerably along the GI tract and may be specific to certain animal species and certain individuals among these species. Now, there's a whole bunch of pathic bacteria that are highly resistant to glyphosate. Salmonella, specifically, Clostridium, perfringens, and botulinum. Highly resistant, but many beneficial bacteria, such as Enterococcus, Bacillus, Bifidobacterium, and Lactobacillus, are moderately to highly susceptible to glyphosate. Campylobacter species are also susceptible to glyphosate. Reduction of beneficial bacteria in the GI tract by ingestion of glyphosate disturbs the normal gut bacterial community. Toxicity is most prevalent in Enterococcus species and could be a significant predisposing factor associated with the increase in Clostridium botulinum-mediated disease, suppressed by the antagonistic effect of these bacteria on Clostridia. Excretion of the glyphosate in the urine of dairy cows from each of 8 dairy farms was studied, and there's an entire list of all the different serum chemistries that were affected. The effect was particularly strong on liver and muscle cells, and nephrotoxicity of glyphosate could be explained by the high urea levels that were found. Low levels of magnesium and cobalt were observed in all animals, which could be caused by the strong mineral chelating effect of glyphosate. The levels of copper, zinc, and selenium were normal. This study showed the extent that Danish dairy cattle exposed to glyphosate had an impact on their blood parameters. They also tested the urine and organs of German dairy cows and the urine of hares, rabbits, and humans. Their various correlation coefficients were fine. However, cows kept in a genetically modified free area had lower glyphosate concentrations in the urine than conventional husbandry cows. So in other words, by keeping them in a genetically modified free area, you could lower the glyphosate concentrations, but not eliminate it. Glyphosate was detected in the organs of slaughtered cows, in the intestine, liver, muscle, spleen, and kidney. Fattening rabbits had higher levels in the urine than hares. Glyphosate was higher in the urine of humans with conventional feeding, and chronically ill humans showed higher glyphosate residues in the urine than the healthy human population. So thus, in both humans and animals, glyphosate residues pose health hazards for the entire population, indicating that global regulation for its use needs to be re-evaluated. Absolutely. And so we have a series of references here, which are available upon request. Thank you very much.